Hello and welcome to BCC Virtual Racing, and tonight's race hosted by the Glasgow Green Cycle Club, the London Loop, a favourite amongst competitors, 30.2 kilometres long, 2 laps, 14.9 each, and a not insignificant 466 metres of climbing. Staggered start this evening from A back to D, 1 minute intervals. The A's will be off in 23 seconds. Starting tonight with category B. Around 190 riders, I think I last saw, some 28 from BCC, 5 in the A's, 13 in the B's, 5 in the C's and 4 in the D's. A few changes of categories this evening, Littlewood moving up to category B amongst them. I'm just listening for the start. In fact, that is the B team, it's the B category that started, so A's have already gone. Just as they get underway, stick with Campbell now. And the hills, as I say, Box Hill is the significant one. Miraculously, we will get from central London to Box Hill via a short but steep underground tunnel. And that in itself has a short ramp of, I think it's 15%, 100 metres long, so this is a significant little climb in its own right. Just as riders are getting tired, great opportunity to attack, but the real opportunities will come on Box Hill itself. Not particularly steep, as most of you will know, of course, 3 kilometres long at 4.3%, and a slight kicker at the top of that as well, and then descending down the other side on Box Hill. So an opportunity there to get into a super tuck. And let's have a quick look through the field, see who we can see. Lance here and Campbell, of course, bigger riders won't be looking forward to the hills. And there, this rider, in fact, Sandy Thompson, is our host this evening for GGCC, a very experienced rider, 136 rides, I think, plus to his name, 74 kilos in weight. One to watch, an interesting rider, and has the credit and should be awarded I Beat Barry t-shirt, as he has done that on a few occasions, but that gives you an idea of his level of performance. So should be right in there with the front pack of the B's. Not sure how he performs on the hills, of course, but we'll soon find out. And while the B's get underway, I'll have a quick look up at the front of the race. For the larger riders, could be an opportunity to try and make a break early, and certainly try and pull away while they can on the flat. Lots of ups coming out here. It's unusual to see them this early in the race. Be wise to save 1 or 2 for climbing up that hill. Although Box Hill is, as I say, 3 kilometres long at 4.3%, 4.3%, apologies. Drafting will still have an important impact. It's not steep enough for that not to make a difference. And here are the A's. Let's have a quick look, see what's going. Stoneham and Tom are in there this evening. This should suit Stoneham, being one of the lighter riders, but the ladies are in there this evening, Jury and Lisa, both keen climbers and both good on the hills, and already looking from a distance. The A's are beginning to stretch out a little bit, but not too much at this stage. So an interesting field with the A's. We have Dames, Jury, Lisa, Stoneham and Tom. Any one of those riders could do well. Tom, of course, has beat Stoneham recently on a number of occasions. Well, I haven't seen them, I don't recall seeing them race on a course like this. Both Jury and Lisa do very well on the hill, so we'll see how it how that pans out. 3.4 kilometres, 4 minutes in. I think, if I remember correctly, Box Hill appears at sort of 5.5 kilometres, something of that nature. So they will go through the underground tunnel, or down into the underground, I should say, following a few tunnels, and then, as if by magic, that then appears. And this little hill here, actually, not to be underestimated, another great opportunity to attack Northumberland Avenue, I think it is, up towards Trafalgar Square. Not very long, but up to 5%. No one at this stage is trying to take an advantage of the hill, but maybe the second time round they will. And this is the front of the field. Well, someone's trying a little bit, has pulled 1 second out from the rest of the field. I doubt very much that will last long. In fact, there comes the peloton closing in now. And consumed by the peloton. So just having a look at category B now, just front runners, just to see where they are. Campbell's up the front, but they are 1 minute 15 seconds behind Cat A. Don't forget, of course, it was a staggered start time, so the A started 1 minute ahead, so it's really a 20-second difference at this stage. Campbell, Kalik in there as well. Lance here. Davis, of course, trying to stick to his 3.99 watts. Empson had a great performance on the last race. Mayhew Smith hanging in there, and Ketley's up there as well. He hasn't managed to stay with the front groups in their recent races. The front of the B group has sort of dropped back to second group, but he will favour this one. He's a very keen hill climber. He knows Box Hill very well, both virtually and physically. Thompson's in there as well from Glasgow Green Cycle Club. And one thing interesting, I noticed Ketley, of course, on screen now, one of those riders with a very high heartbeat, and Thompson, I noticed, is the same as well. So as you can see now, Ketley's on 178, won't be fully warmed up yet, I'm sure. And if I can find Thompson again, just by way of comparison. It disappeared in the mix, but I'm sure it's still in there. So one quick check back up with the A's, see if they've left London yet, and then we'll go back and look at the C's. You know, it's still in London, 5.7 kilometres. Ah, here they go into the underground now. There's an opportunity. It's a very short little underground section. They're downhill. I think there is a right to the left. And it's the final left turn, I think it is. It goes up a steep ramp. Is this it here? No, not yet. I'll just watch these riders for the next 20 seconds or so. Is anyone pushing forward? Not yet. Riders still all together. I'm not sure if I missed the ramp there or not, or maybe I was looking somewhere else. Maybe it's in the other direction. Or is it? No. Anyway, they come out now to the bottom of Box Hill. And just round this small roundabout, and then it's a right-hand turn for Box Hill proper. We'll take riders in this evening's race, probably somewhere between, for the very fastest, I'm not sure if it'll come out of this group, but sort of 7 to 12 minutes, something of that nature. At 8 minutes 20 seconds into the race, the B group. It looks as if they're still largely together. Having a look back, yes, they are all still in one bunch as far as I can tell. But let's move back and not forget the other riders in the event this evening, the C's and the D's. In fact, here is a split in the D's, just have a quick look and see who's in that. So Ketley there, Lance here. And then there is a split. So this is now group, I was going to say Shannon's in group 2, but I don't think he is. He's in group 1. Hadn't seen him earlier, along with Khalid. Here seems to be the split. So this is Littlewood in his, I think it's his first Cat B race. So not a great surprise to see him dropped off that front group, along with Langen, had some mechanical difficulties recently. And further behind them, so Littlewood is performing very well. Civita and Stoneham. I would expect Stoneham to be further ahead. He is a faster rider than Langen or Littlewood, for example. Civita looks as if he might just be doing one of his ride for the team, just to get the points. He can certainly ride much faster than that. And Stoneham's making a break for it by the looks of it. Doesn't like Civita sitting behind him. Is Civita responding? He is a little bit, yes. So we'll come back to Box Hill, Nixon, and Quigley I saw, and Collier in Cat C. Collier up at the front of the group at the moment. Quigley in there, I saw he was only entered in category A earlier. I thought that was a surprise, but maybe just clicked in the wrong button. Group C largely together at this stage. And this is where it begins to split up. Now moving further back, looking for riders, trying to give everyone a mention. And so Group C is actually stretching out over quite a distance. And we begin to move into the fast the fast D's. There's Rob Jones, I think that is, by himself. That will be a difficult ride for him. He needs to pick up from, or connect to someone else. Telford is 28 seconds behind him. These two have competed with each other on a number of occasions. I would expect Telford to be with Jones at the very least. Jones riding 2.1 watts per kilo, riding quite nicely. It's possible Telford got dropped on near the start in one of the groups, and there's Lay coming back to fitness. And he is 24 seconds ahead of Lord. I think that's all of the Cat D riders. So we'll go straight back up to the front of the field now and have a look at what's happening with the A riders, who should be halfway up Box Hill by now. Now Chris Reed is in there, missed him. Ahead of Stoneham. Stoneham's not riding where I'd expect him to be. In fact, he's drifted all the way back into the seas. Langen and Shannon have dropped off that main group of B riders. Mayhew Smith has done the same, but is ahead of them. So the hill is already beginning to take a toll. Empson, Ketley, and that they are being beaten up the hill at the moment by Campbell. He's 4 seconds ahead. That's not what I would expect to see. Campbell often says he doesn't like the hills, but as I keep saying, he seems to do quite well on them. Have a look behind. Yeah, quite clear to see riders are strung out over quite a distance. But let's move further forward up the hill. Davis is pulling ahead, keeping an eye on Thompson. I do believe the two know each other, or have talked to each other, really, the organisation and participation of these races. So we'll be getting that T-shirt ready for Thompson. And there are the markings on the road, first laid down for the 2012 London Olympics. Khalid will be back up in Cathay very soon, heading that way. His recent performances since returning to racing have been getting better and better. And as he says himself, he could probably try harder. So this is approaching the top of Box Hill. I think it's just this right hand bend. It swings around to the left, and then that is it. Tom is 30 seconds ahead of Lisa. Where is Jury? Has she gone over the side? Stoneham, predictably, has been riding well. Seems to be first up the hill. There is Stoneham. And let's try and get a time gap. And here is the little kick that arrives just after the top of Box Hill. So Stoneham at 10.7 kilometres, 16 minutes into the race, is just about to start his descent of Box Hill. Next rider behind him, from BCC anyway, these riders are now 13 seconds, so Tom seems to have, just waiting for Zwift update, seems to be about 35 seconds behind Stoneham. Danes is right with him. Lisa is a further, which is taking the Box Hill jersey though. She's a further 4 or 5 seconds behind Danes, and no, it's just changed the times, it just changed ahead. Another 30 seconds behind Danes and Tom. This is where it'll be difficult for her now on the downhill section. Doesn't quite have the weight and size to keep pace with some of the other larger riders, but seems to be riding well. No sign of Jury at all. Not sure what's happened to her. She may be back with the bees. And here are the bees just coming up to the top now of Box Hill. And it looks like Lancey is over the line first, and that is someone that complains about climbing hills an awful lot. But like Campbell, seems to have done it very well. Crossing with him, Khalid, Davis, Thompson. So that is the first group over Box Hill in Category B. And Campbell is about 15 seconds, 13, 14 seconds behind Davis, Lancier and Khalid. That is also a surprise. Could just be that Lancier is riding very well. He's got to do this again, of course. And someone has their power up in action. Empson, this is unusual. Empson and Ketley. The hill hasn't probably gone quite the way they would have intended. Pace is high though. Empson at 3 was just there, 317 watts, so he's not hanging about. But Empson and Ketley about 20 seconds behind Campbell as far as I could see. And they are now just coming up to the very top of Box Hill as they begin to go over this ridge and down Box Hill. Both in the same team in that blue and black Zwift kit. Have a quick look and see how they manage the start of this downhill. It's quite steep. Will they take advantage of the super tuck? It's always a great idea to take advantage of the super tuck. Not in isolation to try and catch up with someone, but if you're in a group, you can sit there without pedaling. It gives that little opportunity to recover. In fact, there is someone. In fact, the only two aren't in the super tuck are, in fact, Emerson and Ketley. The other rider is pulling away from them without pedaling. And there goes. Nope. I don't know which, is that Ketley or Emerson, but anyway, moving further back, coming up with Group 3 with Langan, Mayhew, Smith. Group 3 in terms of BCC riders at least. Both in the same team kit as well, but not in the same team. Makes it a little confusing. But this, I think, is probably Group 3 by now. Group 4, or really stretched out over such a distance, can't really call them groups, but here we have Littlewood, who is riding very well. This is nice to see with Shannon. It seems to be getting slower recently. It might just be my imagination. But Shannon's a very experienced rider. He knows how to pace a ride like this. Littlewood racing in the Bs, good position to be in, but they want to be sitting on the front. And they have Langan and Mayhew Smith 30 seconds ahead of them. It's a possibility they could catch up. But this is a surprise. Stoneham, Marcus Stoneham, much further back in the field, must be 2 minutes down now, along with Chris Reed just dropping off. But 10 seconds behind him is Collier, and Stoneham will be, it could just be that other riders are now riding a little bit faster, because Stoneham and Collier have often battled it out against each other, though at the moment Collier is in the C's and Stoneham quite deservedly in the B's. I think Collier will, just looking at the way he's been riding, possibly get upgraded. And 20 seconds behind him, Quigley. Next to Nixon, who is now at 10.6 kilometres. We'll have a quick look at the B's, sorry, not the B's, the D's. I did see Cullen had entered earlier and then disappeared off the entry list, so maybe he couldn't make it. Rob Jones and Telford. This is interesting. So Rob Jones was some 27 seconds ahead of Telford. Now Telford is just 4 seconds behind. This is the climb that's having the impact. And Telford is slowly but surely closing in on Rob Jones. If Rob Jones can just hold him off to the top of this hill, he stands a good chance here. Richard Lay, 30 seconds further behind these two riders. That is Rob Jones Telford on screen, but you can see Rob Jones now just a little bit ahead of him. And don't forget, riders have to go up this climb twice. So if you're not a keen climber, you won't be looking forward to it. And then just behind, 25 seconds behind Lay is Lord. Hopefully, with any luck, I can go backwards through the field and get back to the A's. There we are with Stoneham now at 17.2 kilometres, over halfway, back in central London. And Stoneham seems to be, with two other riders, 11 seconds ahead of any other of the category A riders. In fact, those that are 11 seconds back, only 3 of them, and the rest are at least 25 seconds further back. So Stoneham is riding very well. Moving on to the front. probably just taking turns. I'm sure he doesn't want to be there. But trouble is, with 3 riders, if no one makes a move on the front, then it tends to just get slower and slower, or relatively slower, as riders rotate around. He's in a good position, just behind and between 2 riders. 24 minutes, 55 seconds into the race. Riding very nicely indeed. So we will come back to A, of course, a little bit later on, but well over a minute back, Danes and Tom. And a further 150 further back from Danes and Tom is Lisa, who's now joined in with the Cat B riders. Still up the front, Davis, Khalid, Thompson is still in there from PGCC. Lancia is there as well. If I got that right, yes, Lancia, and a further 50 seconds now behind Lancia. Is that correct? Wait for Zwift update. No, 35 seconds. Correction there, Campbell. Looks as if he's been riding by himself for a bit. I'm not sure whether he's just pushed on to try and get away from the group behind him and catch up with those in front. A long way to catch up, but it's a possibility. About 45 seconds behind. No, waiting for Zwift update again. 30 seconds behind Campbell, Empson and Kepley. So, although these riders have dropped off the front of the B group, and indeed they're probably now 3rd group as a guest, I think there's every possibility that Empson and Kepley could catch up with Campbell, some 30 seconds ahead of them. And if they get in a good group, they may even move further forward than that. They will be relying largely now on the second climb of Box Hill. Kepley, 176 beats in a heart, 200 watts, so not pushing hard at this moment, but they are going down a slight hill, -3%. There's not much advantage in this type of race gained from trying to sprint downhill or push really hard on the downhills. And of course, such of this nature, all the advantages come on the uphill, and that's the ideal time to push on, push ahead. Moving back from Ketley, let's see who we can pick up next from BCC. Langen, 46 seconds further back with Mayhew Smith. And it should be Mayhew Smith just behind him. There he is. $194 watts from Mayhew Smith, 222.30. Just about to be overtaken by Langen by the looks of it. And an absolutely fantastic performance from Littlewood, only 20 seconds further back, along with Shannon. So as I said earlier, Shannon not riding quite as fast as he has been of recent, but it could just be that everyone else has got faster rather than him getting slower. I need to look at the numbers in more detail. But what is nice to see is Littlewood is holding his own against Mayhew Smith. He was a Category A rider at one point before being downgraded. But Mayhew Smith still about 18 seconds further ahead. So it's possible that Littlewood and Shannon could close that gap. They have a small group around them, whereas Langen and Mayhew Smith, there they are, just the two of them. So Littlewood and Shannon do have the advantage of a slightly larger group. How many riders? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Stoneham still seems to be drifting back through the field. He's probably content now to stay within this group as best he can. He might take advantage of the climb coming up. Is he still ahead of Collier? Let's see if we can find him. Well, there's Reed. In fact, yes, he is. Collier, he's some 1 minute ahead of Collier, I think, if I read that correctly, who is 34 seconds behind Reed, and then 21 seconds behind Collier Nixon, along with Civita just sitting behind him, annoying him, no doubt. As the D's have now crested, I'm sure they have, the first climb of Box Hill. Let's just move back through the field and see what's happened to them. There is Jones. Now, where is Telford? Ah, okay. So I'm not sure how the gap finished on the top of, at the top of Box Hill. Telford was rapidly closing on Jones. Jones initially pulled out a 27-28 second lead over Telford. Now the gap from 3 seconds that I saw last on Box Hill, it is now 10 seconds, in fact, to Jones's advantage. And I think this is where the little steep climb is as they come out of the underground. Let me just have a quick look here. And there it is. So this is short 100 meter, 15%. Just have a look at the timing here to see what happens with Telford. And that will be Telford just coming around the corner behind, I think. Jones has lost the rider he was with. Telford is closing the gap. He sees Jones up ahead. He's taking advantage of the hill. There is Telford. Jones has just gone over the top. That gap came down to 4 seconds. It's now increasing. 7 seconds. 8. And it looks as if Jones has maintained that gap with Telford. So good move from him. And Lord at 12.6 kilometres. Looks as if she is coming down Fox Hill, I guess. Not downhill anyway. Back with Category A, and Stoneham has been dropped by the 2 riders ahead of him. 5 seconds, so he's by himself now. This is not a great place to be in, but he's a good climber, holding 5.7 watts, whereas the other 2 are holding 6.77 watts per kilo. So it looks as if the 2 riders ahead are battling it out now on this second climb of Box Hill. .9 watts per kilo for the rider ahead of him. And Tom is 1 minute behind Stoneham. Looks as if he's closed the gap a little bit, but closing rapidly behind them. There is Thompson from GCC, Khalik, Davis, Lisa, 39 seconds behind, and that in effect on a real time basis means they are ahead, remembering that the A started 1 minute ahead. Tom sitting with Danes. I'll just watch these riders for a little bit. I want to see what happens at the top of this climb. And here is Stoneham approaching the top. I think this is the top. Oh, not quite, no, sorry. Another couple of bends yet. So Stoneham is 24 seconds behind the riders in front and 24 seconds ahead of the riders behind him. So he really does need to decide what he's going to do. He's not likely to catch up with the riders ahead of him. It's not impossible, but 27 seconds is a long time. He may be better off dropping back to the riders behind him. He may not be able to see. Tom is a minute behind him, so he's still, even if he did drop back to the riders behind him, he'd still be some 30 seconds ahead of the nearest BCC rider. So that may be the most effective strategy rather than wearing himself out, trying to close the gap ahead. He is standing up throughout this climb. So it looks as if Tom has managed to pull in that few seconds since we last looked at Tom and Danes, managed to pull 11 seconds ahead of Danes. There is Danes on screen, and that is Tom with that small group of riders up ahead. And still closing the gap behind Danes, who's now the last Cat A rider, at least on screen at the moment. In fact, there's another one. But closing the gap are the is the first group of B riders. Khalid's obviously heading for a promotion to Cat A, which is where he was before. So Lisa has the polka dot jersey. At 23.7 kilometers, 36 minutes in, 335 meters of climbing completed. As a reminder, in this race, 466 meters in total. So a bit of climbing to go. This is about halfway up Box Hill, if I remember. Stoneham now 48 seconds behind the leaders, just about to overtake someone in Cat D, so it's a great performance nonetheless. And this is where it flattens, goes downhill slightly. And then as the riders go around the corner under the finish of the KOM banner, it flattens off slightly. Then there is a little kick here as well. A good strategy just to push on through that barrier or that banner and keep going. And here it comes. Have a look and see. There is Tom at 24.3 kilometers. James is now 23 seconds behind Tom. He is now out of sight. So Stoneham's got a good, looks at the moment to be 2 minutes ahead of the Bs, including the advantage of the 1 minute start. But here is where the real competition is now. Khalid. Oh, looks as if, oh, no. Waiting for, sometimes the times don't update very well, but that is Khalid pulling away from Thompson from GCC and Davis. That's a surprise, and certainly quite capable of it, and is the younger of those riders. So I suppose it really shouldn't come as a surprise. But then Davis, Lisa, Thompson all together. So this is Khalid's move. Can he sustain this to the top of Box Hill? We'll come back to him a little bit later. Lance here is now dropping a little bit further back. This up the hill the second time has certainly got to him. He's dropped away from Davis and Co. at the front of the BCC group. And I think, as predicted, Campbell is closing the gap with Lancia. There was quite a big gap between the two of them, I think 35 seconds at one point, if I remember. But Lancia is going to get consumed. And there they are, just joining him now. And behind this group, this is Group 2 BCC, see who we can find, about a further 45, 46 seconds back. Empson and Ketley still together. I had predicted they'd catch up with Campbell. That gap was down to 18 seconds at one point. But that does not look as if it's going to happen. So yet again, the climbs seem to be benefiting the large riders. Don't forget, it's not a particularly steep climb. 4.3% average on 5% at the moment. And 3 kilometers long. So I should be able to catch most riders finishing, and about a further 45 seconds further back, Mayhew Smith still with Langan on screen now, and Littlewood is closing the gap. I think that was another prediction there, that there was a possibility he and Shannon might catch up with Smith and Mayhew Smith and Langan, and that looks as if it's happening. 5-second gap at this stage. And that's the view Littlewood has of Langan. Just ahead of him is the rider immediately in front of him. And behind him, Shannon needs to stay on the wheel there. And he does just that. So quick flick through the rest of the field. Stoneham, 23.1 kilometres in. About 40 seconds ahead of Collier. Just trying to add it all up in my head mentally. Reed has maintained his gap over Collier. The second time he's going up Box Hill now. Civitar still just cruising. And Nixon there. Difficult to catch some of these riders now as they begin to overlap or lap each other. Tends to jump from a rider at the front to a rider at the back. See if I can find some of these. That's what I'm trying to do at this stage. And just go back to me and go forwards. That might work. Impossible to tell. But we'll stay with Stoneham as he comes towards the finish. So I'm just trying to work out now. That is rider. So the front riders are still about 48 seconds ahead of Stoneham. But he's now been joined. Looks as if he made the right decision. Dropped back and joined the group behind him. Didn't see that on screen. Camera wasn't looking that way. But here comes Stoneham. Has he got a final push? A sprint up to the finish. The finish will come in view round this corner. There's a left and then a right. It looks as if he might just be cruising. Well, not cruising at 7 watts per kilo, but no, he is in fact. No, he's letting them go by the looks of it. He's content with his position. First BCC rider across the line, is, I think if I've got that right. And then coming up behind, Tom, and he's going to be the next rider. He's a kilometre back at this stage, only just crossing Tower Bridge. So a great ride from Stoneham there. This is not an occasion when Tom has managed to beat him. Seems as if the tide could be turning, certainly when Stoneham's fit and everything's working technically. He does exceptionally well. I'm just looking behind Tom. No one else in view. 29.6 kilometers. Just about to come past the start pens next to the Tower of London. They're on the right hand side on this sharp bend. And Tom at least has managed to pull 31 seconds ahead of Danes, who doesn't normally hang about. So it looks as if it's been a very competitive race in the A's. And the Bs have not caught them on course, but have certainly caught some of the A's time-wise. And we're now at 30.0, 200 meters to go. Some power-ups, drafting one, I think that is, coming out now. Is Tom going to, yes, Tom looks as if he's going to take advantage of that. Quick stand up out of the saddle. Always the competitor, 8.4 watts per kilo. He's not going to let this guy get past him. But he's having none of it nonetheless, and Tom looks as if he does stay ahead, and he crosses the line in second place for BCC. And then Danes is next on course, some 30 seconds behind, but charging rapidly behind him, and we'll go back to see this finish. As soon as this comes into view, Danes will be the next riders across the line, but here's where the action's ongoing. Kalik has pulled, I don't believe what I'm seeing actually, 30 seconds ahead of Davis. That's a formidable performance. He certainly deserves an I Beat Barry t-shirt. They'll be getting in short supply, those t-shirts now. It seems to be happening fairly often. And is Kalik going to have one last push for the finish? I think he might be. 8.7 watts per kilo. 8.6. Easing off slightly. He's going for it though nonetheless. He's going to finish in a time of 45.43. Next up is Thompson from GGCC and Davis. Now, which of the two of these riders is going to win? I'll go for the younger rider, Thompson. Hasn't ridden as many races as Davis, but in fact, Thompson's beginning to pull away already. Let's have a look from Davis's viewpoint. That is Thompson just in front of him in the red. I think it is, in the red shirt. Yes, it is. Does Davis know he's been beaten already? He looks as if he's giving up. He might be trying to get his watts down, of course, to the average of 3.99. Look at that, Thompson going at 10.7, 11 watts per kilo. Let's focus on him for the moment. And there he just about to cross the line. Go back to Davis. He's pulled out over 2 seconds on Davis. And there's Thompson crossing the line, and then Davis. And we go back to Lisa. Some 30 seconds, I think, further back, if I read that correctly. Now, this looks as if it could be an interesting finish as well. This could be Lancia and Campbell, the two big guys. Power-ups all coming out. Lancia at 12.2, Campbell at 9.6. Both about even at the moment. Looks as if Lancey's in the front, going to beat. Yes, he is. Lancey's in the front and takes the line from Campbell. Only just, though. Only just. Next up, Ketley and Empson. Ketley's got a great sprint on him. But Empson's certainly a strong rider, not to be underestimated in any way at all, except when he doesn't try crossing the finish line. I'll be watching for that. Ketley sitting at 1.8 watts per kilo at that moment, but maybe just eased off on the pedal a bit, try to stay behind Empson, which is a good move. This is what he likes to do, sit behind another rider just coming up towards the end. And it will all come down to timing of the sprint. Either rider could do this, but this is something that Ketley likes to specialise in. They're not worried about the other two riders going off. Empson responds a little bit. I don't think that's going to worry Ketley at this stage. Both holding equivalent sort of power. in terms of watts per kilo. Ketley's winding it up a little bit now, 8.1. Empson hasn't responded. Empson needs to be careful. Ketley's going to catch him. This is where Ketley uses his experience. He's got Empson. He's pulling away from Empson. Empson has not responded. And Ketley will cross the line ahead of Empson. Ketley pushing all the way to the finish, just eases off now, and Empson eases off a little bit too early. Moving further back through the field. Mayhew Smith. Forgotten who he was with. Littlewood and this is interesting. So I'm not sure who's pulled ahead and who's dropped back, but it was for most of the duration of this race, Mayhew Smith and Langan together. Langan's now 26 seconds further back, along with Littlewood and no one. Yes. So, in fact, they're all slightly apart. So Mayhew Smith being followed. Sorry, I'm just trying to click on my mouse to get it to move. So Mayhew Smith at 29.1 kilometres, followed 8 seconds further back by Shannon, then Littlewood, and Langan 8 seconds behind Littlewood. So what I was going to say was it has been Mayhew Smith and Langan that have been riding together through this race, and Littlewood and Shannon have been closing the gap. I think that's the right way around, but that's swapped around a bit. So Shannon looks as if he's going to finish on a good performance. Littlewood performed very well for his first B race. Let's have a look at Mayhew Smith now at 29.5 kilometres as he comes up towards the finish. And it's possible Shannon could still catch him. He's got quite a strong sprint on him as well. 10 seconds there over about 600 metres is a bit of a push. And he's not really going for it right now. No need to. His position is fairly secure. He's unlikely to get caught by Littlewood 22 seconds further back. He won't be particularly worried about any of the other riders in the field. So I think it's fairly safe to say that Mayhew Smith will cross the line next. Just as he passes the Tower of London and the start pens. Around this bend, these two slight bends, and he will see the finish line comfortably within his max power abilities. And there's just that slight rise there before the finish line, a slight dip, and then back up again. And there's Mayhew Smith now about to cross the line in, let's say, 51.45, something of that nature. Shannon 14 seconds further back. Shannon about to cross the line as well now. And Langan is next. And as the finish line comes into view for Langan, next on the course to cross the line will be Stoneham, as he too now comes past the tower, the shard in the background and the start pens on the right hand side. So Stoneham has drifted back through the B field by and large and ended up with the C's. About 2 minutes ahead of Collier, his nemesis from the past, when they were both riding in Cat C. And behind Stoneham is Chris Reed, now passing the tower. Not sure how many races he's done now, but it's certainly in the very low numbers, perhaps 3 or 4, something of that nature. About 30 kilometres, 52 minutes for him. And there is Collier approaching the tower. And I won't go and wait for every single rider, but let's just have a look through the field now and see who's left. Civita is still cruising round, I suspect, has lost Nixon, or Nixon's lost him. It looks as if he's lost Nixon. There is Nixon. Well, nearly a minute behind Civita, as far as I can tell. Still crossing Tower Bridge, then he'll see the Tower of London next, and the finish line within a kilometre for him. And we'll have a quick check on the Category D riders before finishing tonight's live stream. And there are no Category D riders. Is it perhaps because they were doing one lap? I'm not sure. And these are the only riders left on the course. So the last rider I can see, other than Civita, who's going for a cruise by the looks of it, to get some points for the team. Collier is about to cross the line. So that will be the end of tonight's live stream. Thank you all for watching. A very competitive race and some interesting results. Next race is on Wednesday evening. Thank you all for watching.